Welcome to Islamabad and the special edition of the Newsmakers on TRT World, asking who will lead Pakistan. A much-demanded election to fill the seats of the House of Parliament here behind me has become more controversial, with the vote count delayed and independents, many representing Imran Khan's PTI, defying the pollsters to take the lead. I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is Pakistan's election.
Ahead of the vote, many had expected a clear victory for the PML-N, led by three-time former Premier Nawaz Sharif, and a second-place finish for 35-year-old Bilawal Bhutto and his PPP. But early results have delivered a surprise. Despite all the obstacles, the PTI candidates running as independents are showing strong. Their leader, Imran Khan, remains in prison, and authorities have cracked down on PTI candidates. The Election Commission, in a decision backed by the Supreme Court, stripped the PTI of its cricket bat symbol on the ballot. But now, PTI candidates are going neck to neck with the PML-N. With an unusually slow vote counting process, Pakistan, scarred by an economic crisis and insecurity, the country could now also be heading toward an inconclusive election outcome.
Now, whoever takes the reins of power will be taking up residence here at the official Islamabad home of the Prime Minister. Right now, it's of course occupied by the head of the Caretaker government, Anwaar Haq Kakar. I'll be speaking to him now, one-on-one, about yesterday's controversial vote and what's to come as we await those final results. Anwaar Haq Kakar, thank you so much for speaking to us on the Newsmakers. I'll be honest with you, at this time yesterday, I had envisioned a completely different interview with you. I believed we would be talking about whom you would be handing the reins of Prime Minister to. Instead, it's the day after the election. We still have no conclusive result at a very crucial time for Pakistan, when people wanted to know who was going to bring stability and hopefully economic prosperity to this country. So what happened? Why don't we have an answer today?
Well, this is the beauty about a vibrant democracy, and Pakistan, is a transitional democracy, and I think so this time it has proven to be a brave democracy also, considering the sort of security and terror challenges we were facing as a society. We still, by and large, exercised our constitutional right, and people voted for their favorite candidates. Now, the direct answer to your question would be that it is not me who will hand over the power. It will be the next parliament who would decide whom they would make eligible with a magic number of 169. So let's wait and we will see. I do not know the answer yet. I'm quite unaware as you are. So we'll wait, we'll see who gets that magic number of 169 to 170.
We will wait and see. Indeed. But they will be taking your seat. But still, it is highly unusual to not have at least preliminary results, an idea of who's going to take power, who's going to have to form a coalition, and how this will work. And part of the problem is yesterday, of course, even though a few days before your government had made it very clear that there would be no suspension of mobile or internet services. And then the day of, suddenly there's a blackout, basically, in communications. Why? And this was also in contravention of a Sindh court order that the services would have to be maintained. People believe that it was to bring chaos to the vote somehow, to kind of destabilize the democratic process so that the opposition, many Pakistanis believe, as you know, will further be suppressed. So why was there this blackout?
Well, our prime responsibility as the government is always the consideration of the security of the people. And just a day before the elections, two gory incidents in Balochistan would remind the people that what sort of a real-time threat we had. Government always has more visibility when it comes to the security. And part of handling that challenge is that you block the communication channel to the terrorists and other insurgents. So we had no political motive whatsoever people went out, they peacefully exercised their right, they voted, and we will see the results, which I'm at the moment I don't have the figure, that how many people have voted in this election, probably it would be a record. So it means if everyone and all of them were allowed, and if their votes are counted, so what else is democracy is about?
It's fascinating, though, because we were hearing actually reports of potential record voter apathy. And then we had one estimate that said most likely 40%, but between 40 and 50%,
Yes.
which actually, since the early days of your democracy, is a pretty normal turnout. Somewhat unfortunately, to only have half the electorate come to the polls. Are you happy with that? And if it is much less, even than 2018, what will you say?
I would be pretty much happy with the 40 to 50% of the turnout if it is the case. The reason being is, as I told you, 2 of our provinces were badly hit by the terror attacks. And if you keep that in view and background, and even then people have came out, they were brave enough to vote for their candidate. This is not usual. This is quite unusual.
Is it not usual, though? Because
if it is exercised in a part of the world where terrorism is only there in movies, for the people, it's all out on the streets, in their villages, in their towns. So it's the sense of fear deters people to come out and exercise this right. But in our case, I think so. People of Pakistan were quite brave. They came out and they voted.
But what do you say to the critics who say this is actually not unusual, especially in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? This is often the case. There's a lot of instability, there's often violence, and that perhaps you could have blacked out the communications within those areas because, as we said, 2 days before the election, it was deemed perfectly safe everywhere else.
This presumption that the terrorists would have confined themselves only to Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa would be a fallacy. And I don't want to share the information which is in the domain of the security institutions. I don't want to scare people further. There probably would have been more potential attacks even in the other 2 provinces. So we did it in the best interest to secure the people. And it has not, and by the way, it was suspension of mobile services, not internet. Internet was available.
Internet mobile services. Many people don't actually have Wi-Fi in their own homes. So if they don't have access through their mobiles, and plus they're out voting. That was what many complaints we heard were about.
It could probably would have been one of minor, what we call it, hindrance in going out or probably finding out some places. But by and large, I don't think so. The suspension of this one particular service has so-called compromised the huge democratic exercise which Pakistanis did. And I think so the results are showing that by and large, it was quite free and fair.
Okay. Still, though, in the history of Pakistan's democracy, we have no prime minister ever able to complete an entire term, and there's been this seemingly endless cycle of taking down opposition, taking down leadership before terms are completed. We're seeing that, of course, right now. And many say that is indeed at the hands of the military. I mean, this can't be sustainable. It can't continue to be this lack of allowing leadership to work through at least a single term.
Well, there are perceptions and there are realities. There are myths. Whatever has happened as far as the change of the government is concerned, at least in the last 2 decades, post-2002, I would call it, it has happened on the floor of the parliament. And it has happened at the hands of parliamentarians. Even if you take the no confidence motion against Imran Khan, it was not passed in GHQ. There were 171 numbers by the member of the parliament on the floor of the house. So how any sane person would call it an undemocratic exercise or so-called intervention from the outside forces. Prior to that, even when Imran Khan was elected, people accused him that his acquisition was the product of a so-called selection process. But the reality of the matter remains that he was elected with the support of 171 members of the parliament on the floor of the House. That's what has happened between 2013 to 18, that's what has happened between 2008 and 13. I think so people have been quite unfair in this criticism of Pakistan's political system. Okay. Yes, people would be influencing, people would be having desires, goals, according to their institutional requirement, but that does not qualify the statement that they are the wheelers and dealers and they are the one who are handling each and every minute details. The parliament and the political system and the political parties are one of the biggest stakeholders in whole of this statecraft arrangement.
It is interesting, though, because this isn't just the media, not least the foreign media. These are Pakistanis we've spoken to on the streets that have said they believe this election was completely timed and organized in a way to keep the PTI and Imran Khan out of power in any way possible. It even came down to the detail of taking what seemed like a detail, but is crucial, taking their symbol, the cricket bat, off the ballot papers. I mean, why was that necessary, first of all? And now to see that it's potentially hadn't worked, if that was the objective, because we're seeing PTI members registered as independents now in the lead in this vote. So to what end?
I think so even prior to the so-called outcome, which still has to come officially, the people had this idea, and there was by and large assessment in Pakistani media by the analysts that usually whosoever has taken the bat or other symbol from any political party it hasn't worked in the past and it wouldn't work in the future. But the point is that it happened due to a judicial process. It is more about the structure of a political party, its own internal democratic exercise, and how those exercises are governed by the law of the land. In the larger interest of democracy, I see it in a quite sanguine way that it has set a precedent for all the political parties to go through that course, and someone in the future would probably be more appreciative of this judicial decision. Well, the working democracy, the performing democracy would grow and evolve in Pakistan.
Okay, will they though? Because when you look at you're talking about the processes going into this latest election, you feel they are just, you feel they went through the proper institutions, but if we look at the entire last 2 decades, you see this, it borders on comical sometimes, the fact that in the last election, the man that many believed would win this election was also in prison at the time and then had to go into self-exile. At one point, he actually faced a death sentence from the military, and now suddenly they laugh and call him the political comeback king of Pakistan. But again, it shows this pattern of constant manipulation, what many interpret as manipulation, of the just process of democracy to keep the opponents, especially those of the military, down.
As I explained earlier, that Pakistan is a transitional democracy and we are evolving. And let's not forget that we had direct 3 military interventions in our history. No one can deny that. And when there is a transformation of power from the military institution to the civilian institutions, there is always push and pull. And my own view is that we have to keep the interest of the larger population while negotiating these power structures. One frame of reference is constitution. The other is the existing pragmatic practices. So the ideal is constitutionalism, and there is a pragmatic arrangement between the different institutions. So what you do, that you try to evolve towards that idealism, and if you want to have a leap jump and confront with the whole structure, then the chaos and the social order at times becomes a risk factor and becomes a jeopardy in itself.
Okay. Final question then. What do you want to see happen now, regardless of who takes power? I mean, we imagine a coalition will have to be built. And then what work needs to be done most urgently?
Well, I wish, pray, political and economic stability for Pakistan, for the people of Pakistan. My immediate concern is that we do get notification of the returned candidates as soon as possible. The session of the parliament is called. Speaker and the deputy speakers are elected, and whosoever would negotiate, all the political parties, and they reach to a decision where they can form a coalition, because it seems that there is no group who can, well, still we do not have the final results, to be in a position to form as a only party to form the government. So I anticipate that there would be a coalition of whosoever it is between the political parties to negotiate. So once that is concluded, a new government is formed. We will pray for their stability, for the stability of Pakistan, so they can take on particularly the economic challenges.
I was just going to say, that needs to be the priority.
Well, that is a priority, no matter who comes into the power.
Okay. Caretaker Prime Minister Anwaar ul Haq Kakar, thank you so much for
Thank you
joining us on the
me.
Newsmakers. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let's get another perspective now on where this vote is going. And joining me now to share their opinions on this pivotal election are the spokesmen for Imran Khan and the PTI, Raoof Hasan, and journalist Mutiullah Jan. Thanks both so much for being with me. As I said to the Prime Minister earlier, this was not the conversation I was expecting to have. We were told the count would be more or less conclusive by this morning. Instead, we really have nothing but speculation and an electorate that's both kind of confused and fascinated, I have to say, or frustrated and fascinated, maybe, with what's happening here. So, Raoof, how do you interpret this delay and what's going on right now?
Well, you're right, the count should have concluded before the morning, as a matter of fact. But it was not, because the powers that be, who traditionally interfere in the election process, decided and opted to do so again, and they held it back. First, the election results, they were slowed down, and then they stopped completely. Post 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. last night, there were no results at all till later this morning. It's a very unfortunate situation, because traditionally the military has intervened and tampered with the results, and they did it in multiple elections in the past, and some of that led to disastrous consequences for Pakistan, including the bifurcation, when Pakistan broke up in two, creation of Bangladesh and all that. It was all a result of the military not accepting the voice of people. And we were hoping that one grows wiser with time, and that this time around they would accept the voice of the people. But like in the past, they've again opted for the same old practice, which the kind of issues that Pakistan is confronted with at this moment in time are likely to generate a lot of resentment among the people, and we could see a lot of them coming onto the streets in due course of time.
I want to ask a little more about that a bit further on, but Mutiullah, this is, of course, we have to be fair, a partisan opinion. He's the spokesperson for the PTI. But as a journalist, and which should be an objective observer, I think in this case, is it that simple that as soon as independents started to take a lead in this ballot, suddenly all official announcements were called off, and then we had these suspicions being vocalized that the military is just interfering because this was not the result they wanted to see?
I think there seems to be a bipartisan realization, if not opinion, about the role of military in the current scenario, that the military should never interfere. But for the current elections, this was not something new for the military, because in the last elections, when the PTI got into power, even those elections were not without military intervention, and the so-called judicial and political engineering that took place in the last election, pre-poll engineering, where the politicians were pressurized to leave the government of Nawaz Sharif, And that's how the judges were also used to punish and convict Nawaz Sharif and Sharif family. And the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif had to leave office and face prosecution at the hands of the so-called accountability courts. So I think the current results are a continuation, and the current alleged intervention is a continuation of that role that actually benefited Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf in the last general elections, 2018, and that's why PTI even today finds it difficult to justify their position with regard to last elections, and they are unable to fully even collaborate with their political rivals in order to get the military out of politics, and they are not willing to shake hands with politicians for that matter. And still Imran Khan, even from jail, is indirectly sending messages for a possible meeting with the army chief. So this kind of contradictory behavior from PTI is really unfortunate, and this is not going to take us anywhere with regard to military intervention in politics.
It's not helpful, to say the least. So in a sense, the PTI is as complicit in not what is the deterioration of the democracy, as you were indicating before. It's not necessarily the deterioration, it's just a continuation of more of the same. And you know, to be fair, I had asked your boss after that attempt on his life that ultimately, did he want the military out of Pakistani politics, or did he want the military on his side in Pakistani politics? He couldn't answer me properly. Could you?
No, there's no confusion within the party ranks, you know, about the fact that the military has nothing to do with politics and it must be out of politics completely. There's no doubt, absolutely none at this moment in time, you know, as we move on. Military's intervention in politics has been damaging across the board. My friend Mati tried to enact a comparison between Khan and other political leaders of this country. I beg to disagree with that. Khan has a political struggle lasting almost 28 years now, and before he became the Prime Minister, he had been in the political arena for about 23 years, you know, at best getting a couple of seats in the parliament, and he stayed out. He continued his political struggle and came back. So enacting a comparison between him and the rest of them, who were actually the product of the military. Khan may have at some stage, you know, become a favorite of the military. That is something, you know, that can be discussed, you know, in greater detail. But he was not brought in by the military simply on the dint of the popularity that the military sort of attributed to him. He was a popular leader. He was possibly the most charismatic leader that Pakistan has produced. And look at it today. I mean, he's in the prison. We were given no political space at all. And yet, I think if the elections are to be fair and free, and if the results are to be accepted, no, I think that we would be running away with 150 plus seats in the National Assembly, maybe more than that. So this speaks volumes of his charisma, of the fact, you know, that people repose their faith in him. So this comparison is a little misplaced. But I would, let's say, you know, sort of cross into a different domain, and that is that military role in political affairs must come to an end, irrespective.
Okay. Mutiullah, you can respond to Raouf's clarification of your opinion there, but also please do include where you think this election can actually go now. As I said, it's just inconclusive, to put it as simply as possible. And no one seems to see a way that there could be a strong enough even coalition formed if so much suspicion now is going into who's supposed to come out of this as a so-called winner.
Well, I think this exactly is the kind of response which is keeping Imran Khan and PTI away from realizing that it's about time that they should shake hands with his political rivals, not because they need to support their narratives, but to keep the military out of politics. And they continue to defy and they continue to differentiate between their connections with military and the connections of their political rivals with the military. So I think this is not going to take both of them anywhere, and this is not going to be.
Can I ask you though, just I have to bring this up. I mean, does the public want any of these political rivals anymore? We've spoken as well about, you know, voter apathy. There's never really more than 50% turnout in these elections. It's been that way for decades. We're not sure what the turnout is in this election, but people are tired of the same political dynasties and families appearing on their ballot papers, many of them are asking, what's the point of even going to the election, making the effort, when we're getting the same system, the same faces every time?
Well, unfortunately, Imran Khan has created a generation through sheer narrative building mechanisms with the help of the military establishment in the past, where the young people are not really as much against the dynastic politics, but more a kind of a cult followers of Imran Khan. They do not really believe in democracy as such or the supremacy of parliament, but they only believe in supremacy of Imran Khan as a person. This is where the things go wrong, and I think PTI has miserably failed to develop a political thinking among their followers and to tell them how important it is to respect democratic values and democratic processes because Imran Khan has been repeatedly cursing Parliament
Do they really
publicly,
define it
in
as a
fact.
democracy, though?
And
Especially
he has been ridiculing democracies.
Sure,
in his,
but I mean, that's
public
what, as for the
discourse.
youth voters, regardless of their party affiliation, do they really define it as a democracy? Because it's been said about Pakistan that they are at the point now that a bad democracy and a democracy that doesn't serve them is just better than a good dictator. That's all they're trying to avoid.
Exactly. I think I would still say that this is not about a democracy, that the Imran Khan's followers hate dynastic politics. It's because they follow Imran like a cult. It's not about political values or democratic values or democratic ethics, but more of a fan following rather than an active political worker actually trying to preach about their party's ideology. There's nothing about ideology in following Imran Khan. So this is very unfortunate aspect. So even if they hate dynastic politics, they do not really love democracy as such, but they only love Imran Khan and whatever he does. And this is where we have to differentiate, unfortunately.
Okay. I know, Raoof, I know you beg to differ on that one, but I have to go back to what you were talking about before, because there is always a looming concern about how supporters of Imran Khan might respond, especially when they see the suppression of the party's candidates, what they view as unfair treatment. We saw how Imran Khan's supporters responded when he was taken out in that vote of confidence. So should we have worries going forward?
Do I have the right to respond to what my friend is saying?
Yeah, go,
this
sure.
is absolutely contrary to facts on ground, because the spectrum of awareness that Khan has created is absolutely unbelievable and unprecedented. I mean, look at his people. In fact, I make an open offer to you, step into my car and, guide me, where exactly do you want to go, 100 kilometers out or 200 kilometers out, anywhere that you want to go. Stay there for 5 minutes and people will gather around you. Just talk to them, 14, 15, 16, 18, 20 years old. They have an understanding of politics that even I don't have. And this is what Khan has given them, to start thinking in terms of their own rights as well as their own responsibilities. And this is a truth that nobody can deny too. Cult following, yes, Imran has been a hero since he was 17, 18 years of age. There's no denying that fact, But he stands for a system which is rooted in public welfare. He stands for a system that is... Yeah.
We're down to our final minute, so I'd actually really like to look forward then, because we are where we are, regardless of how his supporters see him and why. Mutiullah, I'll come back to you. I mean, if you had a magic wand to make this system work in a way that optimally served Pakistan, what would you make happen?
As a journalist, I can only talk about what I see as something seriously wrong with the system. And the first thing I think is, obviously, the military should step out of it. Even though politicians are unable to push it out of the political arena, I think it's about time that military should have some introspection about its own legal, political, and constitutional role. And a decision has to be taken, because it is going to hurt them very badly. And they have acted very harshly on 9th of May, I admit. And what we see today is, I personally feel, is not a hatred for the political rivals like Nawaz Sharif, but a reaction to what happened after 9th May attacks on military installations.
So, quickly, Raoof, I mean, can any government actually survive and maintain any sense of stability, real stability in Pakistan, if the military is to remain the kingmaker?
No. I think it's absolutely vital, and as a matter of fact, I would go to the extent of using the word precondition. It's a precondition to stability in Pakistan that the military opts out.
Is it
and
ever
by the
going
way,
to happen?
I have just one more thing to say, and that is that it is not essential for political parties to be able to sit together for the military to stay out. The military has a constitutional role, and it has constantly violated the constitution by either taking over directly through coups d'etat or, being the shadows behind curtains, and, holding the strings, and making the puppets dance to its liking or disliking, So I think it's important for them to ascertain their own constitutional role and stay out of politics and let the politicians then decide whether they want to sit together or talk about it. I have a think tank and I conduct dialogue, so I'm all for dialogue. At some point in time, you have to sit together and talk to each other, and which I would always support. But at the same time, let them then handle the situation. Let the fear of the military interfering, disappear from the political spectrum of the country. That is the only way to move forward.
And I think a think tank should not be talking to tanks, people with tanks, guns. I personally feel the ball is in the court of Imran Khan, because he seems to be now one of the most popular politicians. If today he just utters one word, no talks with military, only talking with politicians, I think things will change. But this is not going to happen, I think.
Mutiullah, that will have to be the final word. 30 seconds.
I don't agree with that.
Okay, fair enough. That will have to be the final word then, because we are completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank both of my guests so much for being with us. Our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.